Hi there. So today I am going to be answering the question, which books should I buy? I've been buying books for a while now, and it's always a big dilemma for me when I go to the bookstores of which books are worth my money. And so over these past few years, I've come up with a couple strategies to know which books are worth spending money on. I'm not an expert on this, but hopefully these strategies work for someone because they definitely work for me. Whenever I go to the bookstore or whenever I go book shopping as a whole, it's a whole day affair. I don't just go to one bookstore, I go to many. I usually go to Politics and Prose, which is an independent bookstore in DC, which is where I live. And then I always go to Amazon Books because you can get discounts if you're a Prime member, and they also always have very good current and popular releases. So the Amazon bookstores will always have the most popular or the best reviewed books that are on their website. And then sometimes I go to Barnes and Noble, and then I always go to the library as a part of my book shopping journey. So before I go to the bookstore, the first thing I do is make a list of books that I really want to get. So the way that I come up with this list is from recommendations that I get from videos or websites or blogs, and I just sort of make a list of all the ones that seem really interesting to me or that have really good reviews. I judge how trustworthy the recommendation is based on if they have given me a good recommendation in the past, such as if I watch a particular booktuber and I really relied on their recommendations in the past, or if I have a lot of the similar opinions to them on certain books, then that tells me that they're trustworthy. If they've liked books that I've liked, and the same thing goes for websites and blogs. If I've looked at stuff from this website or this blog before, and it has a lot of stuff that I would recommend for myself or that I've read and I've enjoyed, then I know that it's going to be a more trustworthy recommendation. And then on my list, I have a few books that I found just in random places. Either I saw them on Goodreads as new releases, or they were from a source that I haven't really verified whether it's trustworthy or not. But I think the premise is really interesting, or there's something about it that really appeals to me and I know I'm going to like it. Then I also add those. It's usually a pretty long list because the bookstores, even though I go to a lot of them, won't have every book that I want on the list, but they'll usually have a few of them, which is why it's good to have a lot of backups and a lot of options, so that because I don't go to the bookstore as often as I would like to. I like to always make sure that I'm making the most of my trips. Another thing that I do along with the list is I set a budget for myself and a time restriction. The budget usually ensures that I don't spend too much, obviously, and the time restriction really helps that further because it means that I don't have a lot of time to go through and find like all of these random books that'll cost so much money, but I just need all of them. And so the time restriction really helps with that because then I can get in, find the books that I really want, and get out. So if I don't see any of the books on my list, which it never happens where I don't see any of the books at all. And since I hit up multiple bookstores, I don't. I usually can find most of the books at least one of them. But if I don't see any, or if your list is too short and you don't see any for yourself, then what I usually do is I ask one of the people working at the bookstore for recommendations, or I look through the books and find one or two that seems really interesting, and I just get that. But I don't do that too often because I find that sort of these impulse purchases where I just see the book and it seems really interesting, I find that these don't always work out the best, because usually it's just on the day. It's usually just based on what I'm feeling that day and not what I actually may want to read. So it doesn't always work out as well for me, and they usually just end up sitting on my bookshelves unread. Another thing is when I look at the books that I'm buying, if I'm hesitant to buy something, or if I'm hesitant to spend that much money or buy however many books, then I don't buy it. I feel like I don't really want to be in the place where I regret my purchases, and especially since they're all here and I can look at them and regret them. I don't really like that. So I would recommend, if you're hesitant to buy something, just don't. Or, sort of mark it and then move on, and maybe later you'll really know if you want to get it or not. Another thing is that if the reason, personally, I know that I see a lot of booktubers who talk about this and may do this, but for me personally, and in the interest of making the most of my money, if I see a book and the only reason that I want to buy it is for an aesthetic reason, like the cover's nice or the title is interesting, then I don't buy it. I feel like you don't, like, you don't have all the money in the world to buy it on books that just look pretty on your shelves and that you're never going to read. So that's just my personal opinion. The last thing is when I go to the library. So I always include a library trip to my kind of book shopping, because any book that I'm unsure about, or that came from a source that maybe their recommendations have maybe done me wrong in the past, or it's from an author that, again, I've not really liked in the past, but maybe one of their other books interests me, then those are the ones that I get at the library. And I would recommend that if you aren't really sure about a book but you know that you want to read it, or if maybe you don't have the money right now to buy books but you really want to read something before the movie comes out, then I would recommend adding a library trip into your day of book shopping, because then you can get what you want to read for free, and you can, if you really want it that badly to own it, you can always just buy it later. So those are my kind of strategies for when I go to the bookstore, and hopefully they might help if you're going to the bookstore yourself or anything like that. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe, comment if you agree, or if you disagree, that's okay as well. And yeah, bye.